two kinds of Buddhism. I am not talking about Theravada and Mahayana and all that. Even with the Theravada Buddhists, there are two kinds of Buddhism. One I call Sansaric Buddhism. The other is Nirvanic Buddhism. Now, Sansaric Buddhism means that people are all the time talking about karma and rebirth. So they like to live in samsara. They don't like to attain nirvana. They want to be in samsara, and it is based on karma and rebirth. That means you do a lot of ping or kusala karma. That means you may be observing the 5 precepts, or maybe giving dana and doing all kinds of meritorious deeds with the hope that you will be reborn in the heaven or in a good way in the next life. And to avoid bad karma, in order to avoid going to hell or it's all based on the idea of rebirth and karma. That is Sansaric Buddhism. Most people today are following that Sansaric Buddhism. Now, when we ask about Nirvana, they might say, Nirvana is simply being, you die and you are not born again. That is what Nirvana is. So this is why the Pope heard about this, and he had mentioned that he feels very sorry for the Buddhists, because he says that we as Christians, we are having hope. What is the hope is that we'll be going to heaven after death, and we'll have happiness and life ever after. Eternal life. But these Buddhists, they want to die and die forever. That's a very pessimistic religion, because they want to, they say life is suffering, and so the best thing is to die and die forever. Now this is what the Pope said. And so when the Pope had said this, the people in Sri Lanka, they got very disturbed, and they started writing articles to the papers, and they did, so the papers, the journalists started saying that Pope has disturbed the hornet's nest. You know, there is, the hornet's means that the Debra කූඩුවක් මේ අවුස්සලා. ඒ මොකද මේ සිංහල මිනිස්සුන්ට කේන්ති ගිහින් බෞද්ධයින්ට කියලා අහන්නේ. So at that time I happened to go to Sri Lanka. That was the time when I came to Sri Lanka, and then I read in the papers about this. So what I did was, I thought I should write an article. And I wrote an article. When I wrote this article, I sent it to all the papers. So all the papers published this article. And there I was trying to say that you don't have to be disturbed about this. The Pope, of course, he did know Buddhism, and he could have made a mistake. After all, the Pope is also fallible, I said. Fallible means that they can be wrong, make mistakes. And I said, this could also be that the Buddhists don't understand Buddhism. Because what the Pope said is correct. Because all Buddhists believe that Nirvana is to die and die forever. That's what the Buddhists are thinking. So I said, there is nothing wrong with that. And then I said, the Buddha, teachings of the Buddha is not like this. Because the Buddha spoke about two extremes. One is called eternalism. Eternalism means to continue living forever. That is eternalism. And that is what the Pope was talking about. And the other extreme was called annihilationism. Annihilationism means that you die and die forever. You are annihilated. And the Buddha said, I avoid these two extremes. And avoiding these two extremes, I take the middle path. And the middle path is, first you have to get rid of this idea that you are existing, that you are a self in this world, existing as a self. And only when you have given up this illusion, the giving up that illusion is Nirvana. And if you are not existing, how can you die? So if you are not existing, then you cannot die. So it is not a death here. There is no death here. There is only an illusion of existence. And if you give up the illusion of existence, all suffering comes to an end. There is no birth, old age, disease and death. That is the meaning of Nirvana. So I explained that, and then of course I said many things about it. And when people read that, that whole debate came to an end. And the other thing is, I got letters from the Buddhists as well as the Catholics and the Christians congratulating me for that. And because both parties appreciated what I said. And then the Vatican organized a thing called the Buddhist Christian Dialogue. They didn't have this dialogue in Sri Lanka. They had it in Taiwan. Taiwan, there is a Chinese temple called the Fo Quan San temple. And there they had all the facilities for a conference, a very beautiful hall with the modern facilities, with microphones and all these things. And so they invited me. They sent me a ticket to go there. So I went, and I was asked to give a talk and give it in writing, my speech. So I had to read it, but I didn't really read it. I wrote the paper, and I read it halfway, and then I started speaking on my own. And so at the end of it, they started asking all kinds of questions. I answered all those questions. Some of the questions they thought would be difficult for me to answer, but I answered all the questions. So the important thing here is that this kind of thing happens because of this Sansaric Buddhism concept. The Buddha didn't come into this world to preach Sansaric Buddhism. What is called Sansaric Buddhism is really Jainism, not Buddhism. Even before the Buddha, there was this Nigantanath Putra, if you have heard that name. So Jainism, he was Jain in that sense. And this Nigantanath Putra was able to, he was teaching this kind of teaching, samsara. And this Sansaric Buddhism also has this concept of punishment and reward. Now, people who write books on this kind of Buddhism, they say karma is a law of punishment and reward. They always, this is based on the feeling of guilt or conscience. People have a thing called a conscience, where you begin to think you are wrong and feel guilty about what you do. And so there is this belief that because of that, the bad people should be punished and the good people should be rewarded. So this karma, because originally they thought about God. God is the person who punishes and rewards people. But when the idea of God as a creator disappeared, then what was left was karma that is doing that. So they thought karma is punishing and rewarding, just like God is punishing and rewarding. But that is not the meaning of karma. This is very important to understand. People, when they think in terms of karma, they are always thinking of circumstances. This is the important thing. There is the circumstance means whatever happens in the world. And this is also what is called Attaloka Dharma. Attaloka Dharma means the 8 vicissitudes of life. Vicissitudes means what happens to you, like gain and loss, fame and ill fame, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. These are things that come and go in life, and these are the Attaloka Dharma, the 8 things. Now people are all the time worried about these circumstances like that. And they think, when something bad happens to them, they always think, this is my karma. And this is so, they are thinking of karma. And then nothing can be done about this. This is my karma. This is how they think. But this is not the teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha spoke about karma, whereas Nigantanath Buddha spoke about vipaka. His emphasis is on vipaka. That means the results or the consequences of actions. The Buddha was talking about the action part, which is the karma. This is the meaning of karmavada, not the vipakavada. Now, if you concentrate on the vipaka, what happens is you're all the time worried about your circumstances. But what the Buddha pointed out was, what is more important is not your circumstance, your attitude to circumstance. That is what it is. If you have a bad circumstance, how do you face that circumstance? How do you face that bad circumstance? Now here in the West, if you find a man whose one arm is missing or something like that, so something can be done about it. Here people even give jobs to people who are deaf and dumb and blind, because whatever your circumstance, you can always do something about it. So it is your attitude. You can look at the circumstance in a good way or in a bad way. The way you look at it is your attitude to the circumstance. You may be born a poor person, but you can do something and become rich. So you don't have to be crying and lamenting about the fact that you are poor. That is not Buddhism. Buddhism is changing your mind. This is the important thing. This is why the first verse in the Dhammapada, what does it say? Mano pubbangama dhamma, mano setta manomaya. In a simple way of saying that is, your mind is more important for you than your circumstances. How you think. This is why one of the American people wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich. If you begin to think in the proper way, you can become a rich person. So the richest depends on how you think. Now, most of you are here. You were born in Sri Lanka, but now you are here. How is that? It is your thinking. Because you have been either studying and getting qualified in your getting degrees and all that, or whatever. Or it may be simply a poor person can come here also. There are a lot of poor people who have come here. They don't have a qualification of any kind. They are doing all kinds of small jobs, like maybe working in a gas station or maybe some 7-Eleven or some place like that, and somehow they earn some money. So everything depends on how you think. And the thoughts is the prominent thing in the teaching of the Buddha. Now there is a very interesting book you should all read. This was not written by any Sri Lankan Buddhist or Thai Buddhist or any of these Buddhists. This was written by an American man. And he is now dead. He was a very intelligent person who has studied Buddhism, not just memorizing stanzas and things like that, gathas or anything like that, but he has been thinking about this, and he may have been even meditating. And he wrote this book. And the title of this book, it's a very small book, you may call it a booklet, a small book. And the name is my memory doesn't work properly. This is the thing that it's a thing that is always in my mind. The book. It will come to my mind later, I'll tell you. So in any case, this book, you should all read. And it costs about $1 or $1.50 or something like that. You can buy it. It's a very small booklet. But you have different editions. You have hardcover editions which are a little more expensive and things like that. But it's not a very costly book. But when I was about 17 years, I came across this book. And I read this, and it became my meditation. Every day I read this book. And I have read that maybe 50 times or 100 times, I don't know. But I have read it so many times because it's very inspiring book. And the whole book is written based on the first verse in the Dhammapada. Mano Pubbangama Dhamma, Mano Sitta Manomaya. That was the basis of this whole book. And if you want to know the real karma, you should read that book. All these other books written about karma and rebirth, it becomes useless when you read this book. You begin to understand the real meaning of karma. He tries to point out that the way you think is more important than everything else. It's the way you think that makes you rich or poor even in your normal life, and this has nothing to do with rebirth. Here and now itself, if you can live a good life by changing your thinking. That's the important thing. And so the important thing is that when we begin to think that way, we are coming out of this karma and rebirth Buddhism. Because we are now thinking in terms of correcting our mind. So the important thing about the Buddha or Buddhism is the purpose of the teaching of the Buddha is to improve our mind. Now, improving the mind is the important thing. So this is why we have to understand as Buddhists what a Buddha is. Now, in order to understand what a Buddha is, I start, especially in this part of the world, I start with the concept of God. Now, God, to the Sri Lankan Buddhist, God means Devyo. The word Devyo comes, with this word Devyo comes the idea that we are talking about some people living in the Devalokas. That is the meaning of Deva. But that is not the meaning of the word God. This is very important to understand. You see, when we speak of the word God, we have to understand that there are different forms of God. One is God with the simple G. Then there is another God with the capital G. So God with the simple G is not the same thing as God with the capital G. And there is another word, angel. Now angel simply means the inhabitants of heaven. So our Devyo, the word our Devyo is really angel, not God. That's the important thing to understand. So when we speak about Kataragama Devyo, Vishnu Devyo, these are all from this English person's point of view is just an angel. Or there are these gods which are just created by the people. That means the sun god, the moon god, the god of war, the god of love, and all these things are just mythical gods. These are all gods based on belief. People just believe. Different cultures have their own gods. Now the Sri Lankan Buddhists have gods called Vishnu and Kataragama and all that. Where did these gods come from? They are the Hindu gods from India. You go to Thailand and ask whether they have these Kataragama god and Vishnu god, they don't have these gods there. You might think there are no gods, but they have their own gods. They have different names, different gods. You go to China, they have some other gods, they are called bodhisattvas. So these are all human beings in different cultures. They begin to believe in different kinds of gods. Now that kind of God is the God with the simple G. That's very important to understand. Now when they have this capital G God, that capital G God is a different thing. This capital G God, they say, is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. You see, that is a different one. That means, omniscient means all-knowing. And omnibenevolent means all good, all loving. And omnipotent means all powerful. Right? Now, do Buddhists believe in a person like that? Buddhists have a belief like that. When Buddhists think of a person who is all-knowing and all good and all powerful and all, who is that? It is the Buddha. The only difference is that the Christian thinks that this all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good person is the creator of the world. But the Buddhist thinks that person is not the creator of the world, that is the human being who rises to that level. And when the human being rises to that level, he is called Buddha. So we can easily say Buddha is the God of the Buddhists. God doesn't mean he's living in heaven or something like that. That is the Christian God, or the Jewish God, or the Muslim God. Christianity, Judaism and Islam are based on one Bible. And it is that way of thinking. It's a different way of thinking. Now the Hindus also have their gods. Hindus also believe in a god called Brahma. There are really three gods, Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. And they say that these three gods are really one. And that these are different stages. Brahma is the creator of the world. Vishnu is the preserver of the world. And Shiva is the destroyer of the world. Now that concept you have in Christianity, but with one God. Because Christians believe that the God created the world, so he becomes the creator. And then there is a God that the Christians pray to,